What's up, guys? Welcome to another podcast. We have Dakota here. Dakota, as you know, super regular on the channel. You are now in 3 of 4 podcasts because this will air in like a week from now. I am pre-recording an episode pretty far in advance because me and my wife are in the process of moving, and I wanted to make sure that I had a podcast just in case we don't get the internet stuff situated away. So Dakota, also thank you for making the time to be on here, man. I love having you on. So.
Of course, I love being here. Thanks.
Heck yeah, man. And of course, we have, as always, a pretty interesting topic to discuss today, which we will get to in just a second. But just out of curiosity, Dakota, which I know obviously things could change within the next week before this would go up, but do you have anything new going on with you? Anything new language-wise? Study patterns? Any new videos for your channel? Anything like that? Anything new with you?
I don't have anything too terribly new. Because right now we're sort of midterm time, and I'm in my final semester of a master's degree, so I'm a little bit busy with that.
Gotcha.
So things are a little bit slow on my channel, and I've put language learning, like, not at a halt, but I've slowed it down a little bit.
Sure.
But I'm expecting in the week after this airs, I might be getting some newer things out, but I'm not sure yet because that's still 2 weeks away. So.
Right, sure. And I know that I missed it because I think you went live yesterday with one of your Mandarin things, but it was a little bit earlier than the last couple, and I missed it. But
yeah,
that's super cool. I guess, are you close to? I don't know how many skills are in the Mandarin course. The only thing I have reference to is Esperanto, and I know it has 40, 44 or 45 or something like that.
I'm not sure how many skills it has, but I feel like I have to scroll further than I do with Esperanto.
Right.
So there might be more of them. But I typically do 3 or 4 in a live stream, and I did the math the other day, and I've got about 6 live streams left.
Nice.
So,
that's not bad. That'll be cool. That's super cool that you're close. Yeah, I guess Esperanto really can only do so much just because of, I mean, it is a constructed language, and it's one of the more intricate ones that I've ever seen, but it's still limited.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be very simple, the grammar, so there's not a lot of grammar to learn through Duolingo. So
that's cool, man. I'm getting ready to. I have one course left, and I will be done. I have to do concepts, which is the very last little blimp on the tree, and then I will be done. That'll be my first ever completed Duolingo.
That's really exciting. And then you're working on Spanish now, right?
Yeah, Spanish. I started. Okay, so to start the year off, I said by the end of January, I'm going to finish Esperanto, and then I'll have the rest of the year to work on Spanish. And what happened is I started reasoning with myself, and I said, and at this point, I think I had maybe 7 or 8 lessons left, like of the the little. I call them lessons because I guess the lessons are the main thing, and then the levels are inside, maybe, or would the anyway. The point is, I had 7 tasks or skills left to do. There we go, skills. Mm-hmm. And I started reasoning with myself, and I said, "But why not just put all your time and effort into Spanish? Because it's gonna get you further, like, whatever." And then I started enjoying Spanish, burning through it like crazy, and that's fine. But then I said, this is always your problem. You never finish anything.
Yeah.
And so that's why last week, and I hadn't fully stopped. I had maintained. And I would still, over the course of a week, do a task or a skill or whatever. And so last week, I think I had 3 left, and I said, I made the video, and I was like, by next Friday, I'm finishing Esperanto. Like, it's done, so... which I'll make a video about that. I don't think I'm going to continue my study of it. I really love it, but I'm comfortable where I'm at now. Yeah. I might have to look up the word for guardrail or something like that. You know what I mean? Like something random, but I'm fully satisfied with where I'm at. So, but yeah, Spanish is going to be, I am going to do, and that's actually, we can branch into today's topic. I am going to do 2 languages this year. Originally, I said I was just going to do 1. Mm-hmm. But I haven't. Yeah. Well, dude, you start to build that confidence, and I'm not going to get stupid with it. And I know that people like Moses can learn 4 languages at a time, but he's a little bit more seasoned of a vet than me when it comes to language learning. But I'm going to go with 2, and I do have an approach to it. And what I'm going to do is Spanish is my main. If I have only a little bit of time in a day to study, Spanish is getting it. If I only have, say, an hour, I'm not going to split it. Like, I want, an hour I would love to spend on language learning a day, but sometimes that's not possible. But if I do have additional time, I will study it, and I'll talk about that. Well, I'm going to do Norwegian because I love Scandinavian languages. I don't know why, because it's like they're kind of like, I don't know, man. I can't explain it. I could talk about that all day, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat it exactly as that, as a second language. Spanish is my main focus. So Norwegian, I'm just passively, casually going through.
Yeah.
And
sort of like dabbling, but with a goal.
Exactly. If I finish the tree this year, fantastic. But that's not my goal. My goal is to just get acquainted with it, because my goal is Spanish is my main. By December, I want to be conversational, comfortably conversational.
Yeah.
If I get that way with Spanish and I have a solid base in Norwegian, great, because that means my goal for 2019, Norwegian can become my main focus, and I can build on what I've built, and then I can pick up a secondary language and do it again.
Yeah.
So,
which is exactly, but that's what I like to do a lot when I'm learning multiple languages. Should we introduce the topic before we jump right into this?
Absolutely, yeah. Go for it. You can if you want to.
Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is learning multiple languages at the same time, and look, sort of the benefits and the downfalls of that. I can't remember if we decided if we're going to talk about learning similar ones or different ones. I sort of wrote down notes for both.
Okay, we can go into either one, because I think that there is, I think it's a very important thing because to me it is very different if you were to, all right, so if you were to learn Spanish and Italian at the same time, that's way different than learning Spanish and Chinese at the same time.
Yeah.
So
it's complete. And isn't Spanish and Italian, that's what Polyglot Progress, Matt and Abigail are doing right now, right?
They are. And they're actually killing it, but they're a special breed of people.
They are indeed.
They, and I mean that in a positive way. I don't mean that like negatively. Like they are just, they kill it.
Insane with their language skills. Yeah. I wish I could do as well as they do.
Me too. I think it helps a lot too, having someone in your household that shares that interest.
Definitely.
So, because I'm assuming, I haven't watched their latest podcast, but I think it was something about their German journey, like how they learn German and stuff. And I was like, I guess they could literally go out and eat and just specifically only talk German, so they can practice that whenever.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be?
Yeah, that would be great. But anyways, like what you were saying is like your goal this year is to learn Spanish and sort of like dip your toes into Norwegian to get yourself acquainted with it.
Right.
When you've got extra time, because your main goal is Spanish, and then you're going to work on getting acquainted with Norwegian. So when you do start to study it, you've already got at least some knowledge of it. You're not starting, completely anew.
Right.
Which is what I do. Like when I tell people how many languages I've sort of like looked into and studied a little bit, they're always like, wow, that's so many. Because it's like up to like 12 or 14 now. But I'm always like, but I haven't like really studied them. I've just sort of like dipped my toes into a lot of these. And I try to explain that to people when they ask how many I've studied.
Right.
I'm like, well, I've done a semester or two of this language, and in my free time I'll look up grammar points about this, because there are a lot of languages I want to learn. And when you're just plowing through a language, like if you're really 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 getting into your main language, so say when I was getting my French degree, I was learning a lot of French. Eventually you burn out.
Absolutely. 100%.
Want to do something else. So I would still want to learn and study. So what I would do is like, let's learn a little bit of German today instead of French. And so I'd use another language as sort of like a refresher. I'm still moving forward. I'm still doing something productive, but it feels like fun or a game to me because I'm doing something new.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, one of the best parts about learning multiple languages at the same time, or learning multiple languages. Like you can dabble in the one and it will be a refresher, and it'll keep you motivated to do the other one because it won't feel so much of a slog because you've got something to break it up.
Yep. I think that's a very good point. Man, my mind just blanked. So the idea of studying two at the same time is exactly that. Like, I don't necessarily know if I think it's a good idea to intensively study two at the same time, but what you said is true. to me, I don't want to get out of the habit of studying.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm getting burnt out on Spanish, if I've hit a wall and I need to break, I'll take a day off of Spanish, but I also know that I have that Norwegian on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
I can jump into that. I'm keeping my schedule. I'm not getting out of a habit of training and studying and stuff like that. Also, I've always looked at it as a way, it's almost like a brain reset, because your brain has taken in this information, all these words, all this Spanish stuff, all of it, blah, 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 blah. And then when you learn something new, it's almost like your brain is like, huh? What? Something new? And it can absolutely refresh you.
Exactly. Yeah, and like there's like only so much your brain can take in, like you said. And especially if you're stuck on something, especially if you're having a hard time with a grammar point. Like in French, there's l'imparfait and the passé composé. They're both past tenses, but they have different uses. Like in English, we've got the simple past, and we've got the past continuous.
Right.
So sort of like I was running is the past continuous, and I ran is the simple past.
Right.
The imparfait is pretty much like the past continuous, and the passé simple is, or passé composé is pretty much our past simple tense. There are a little few differences, but like when I was learning that in university, there were a lot of people who had trouble with that, and they didn't know when to use which one. And we spent probably a month in one of my classes just on that. Yeah. And so like you can only do that same thing and not understand it for so long. Sometimes you need to take a step away from a hard grammar point. You need to look at something else, because if you just keep staring at the same thing you don't understand, you won't necessarily begin to understand it. You'll just get frustrated.
Yeah.
And frustration really kills motivation when you're trying to learn a language. And motivation is something you desperately need when doing something like this.
Well, one thing I've noticed, and I'm sure you doing it, you've probably noticed too, just like you said, if you concentrate on something so much, you're not going to get better at it. It's going to make you mad. And when you start learning angrily, you need to step back, because it's going to create that negative just reaction in your body, because that, or in your brain or whatever, because that's what you're used to. It's like you get there and you get frustrated. To me, I'll never forget the biggest leap in Esperanto that I made is I started getting frustrated because of I think I was a little bit further into the tree, but I was still struggling with accusative, and I just could not grasp the concept of it. I could not understand that if something was taking the action of the verb, you threw an in on it. And you would think explaining it like that is easy as pie, but what's the number one complaint in Esperanto? Accusative. Yeah. So I took a week, put it away, and I said, I'm going to go into something I've never even tried. And that's when I went into Polish. For 1 week, I studied Polish. I remember one word, and that's dobranoc, which is good night, okay?
Yeah.
And after that week, I was like, God, this is so hard. Okay, let's go back to Esperanto. And dude, it's just like something clicked, and for whatever reason, I just understood. And not just the accusative, but a lot of things. There was a lot of things I was struggling with that just taking that week off, everything made sense coming back.
Yeah, and like that's one of the best parts about having like a major language you're studying and like sort of like a side project, is like it allows you to take that time off if you really need it.
Yep.
You're still being productive, you're still doing something. Having a schedule, like you mentioned, is really important to language learning. And having a general schedule for my day is something I like to try to keep anyways. So just taking a break from language learning isn't really the best thing if you can avoid it. And so having a secondary language to fall back on is really, really helpful.
Yep. I'm just addicted to it is another thing. Like I know, like there's I'll talk to people that I work with and they're like, oh, why don't you take a break and play a game? And I'm like, this is my game. Yeah. Language learning is like that. This isn't a school thing. This isn't something that I'm forced into doing. Like you play whatever game you're playing, I learn languages. That's my fun.
Yeah.
Now, I may get frustrated with it, just like if you're playing Final Fantasy and you can't beat that boss, you may take a break and you may go to Chrono Trigger and chill for a minute and just play something that you've played before. Like, and that's me with language learning. So,
exactly.
And so, yeah, I don't want to get out of that schedule and stuff as far as that goes. So, But that's, to me, that's, and anybody, obviously, and ultimately at the end of the day, let me, before we go any further, say what works for you watching, you, Dakota, you, me, it is individual basis. I just don't have the time. If I could set aside a block of 4 hours in a day and I could study 2 hours of this and 2 hours of this, sure, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect world.
Yeah. And then what you just said about, different people being different actually brought me back to, Polyglot Progress with Abigail and Matt, because what they're doing right now is they're studying. If I understand, I only watched their first video. I'm behind on some of it. Because their videos about this are really long.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit behind on those.
I think one of the last ones they did was like 30 or 40 minutes.
I don't know how they had the patience to put together long videos like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But so they're learning them side by side. One, like if they do one lesson in Spanish, they do the other one in Italian, right? They're keeping perfectly in sync.
Right.
So like a lot of people, the reason they're doing this is a lot of people say don't learn two very similar languages together at the same pace because you'll get confused.
Right.
And in their first video, at least, I remember one of them saying, if I remember correctly, that learning them side by side like this was helping them see the differences. They weren't focusing on the similarities. They were seeing the differences.
Right.
And it was actually helping them in that way. That's not how my brain works.
I don't think mine is either.
I've tried to learn Spanish and French at the same time, which are even less, they're still similar, but they're less similar than Spanish and Italian are.
Right.
And I couldn't keep those apart. Like, granted, my French was stronger at the time, but I couldn't do it. Like, I kept mixing my French into my Spanish mostly. I would add French to my Spanish, but occasionally Spanish would seep into my French. My brain doesn't work that way. I can't learn too similar. But for them, I think it was Matt that said it. It's
That's
working
what I
for him.
I was thinking too.
It's making it easier for him, and like everyone's brain works differently.
Yeah, I can agree. The only experience that I have similar to that is when studying Esperanto. Sometimes when I talk, I will. I remember at the very beginning, I think I even have a video on my YouTube channel, like it was like struggling speaking Esperanto or something. I think I said something like me, and it's funny to watch those videos now because of how much I've advanced in it, which I'm not advanced, but you know what I mean. But I can remember saying, because the word for water in Esperanto is akvo, and the word, it's obviously agua in Spanish, and I can remember saying, mi shatas trinki agua, and didn't even click in my brain until I watched. I think somebody commented and was like, "Agua's Spanish," and I was like, "Crap." But the only time I think it's okay is, I think once you establish a base in a language, like once that building block, once that foundation is set, I think it's still not easy. Of course, everybody's different, but I think that then you can go from. I think it's easier to separate them once that foundation is laid, because you kind of more so understand patterns and stuff like that of that language.
Yeah, I would agree. That's what I say. Like, once you've got like a base in one language, it will be easier to learn a similar language after that. You still might mix them up, but you won't mix them up as much.
Right.
Not that long ago, I put out a video about learning similar things at the same time. Because if you learn things that are really, really similar, like words that are spelled the same and have similar meanings, if you learn them all at the same time, there's a good chance your brain's going to have trouble remembering which one's which.
Yeah.
When I did this, I still don't know the difference. I still don't remember which it is. But I used a grammar point. And in Japanese, so there's a verb. It's taberu. It means to eat. This is a bad example. But you can say tabe so and taberu so. So like in one you chop off the end of it. One of them means it looks like they're eating, and the other one means I heard that they're eating. And I don't remember which one's which because they were taught to me at the same time. They're so similar, and I can never remember which one's which.
Gotcha.
And when you're learning two similar languages, that have very similar grammar, very similar vocabulary at the same time, your brain can have the same problem because our brain likes to make connections to things.
Right.
So when you're learning two similar things at the same time, your brain will make connections too closely, and it'll have trouble separating them when you need them to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And like I said, I still don't fully understand how Matt and Abigail are getting around that. But like I said, they're a special breed of people. But that's always my thing, is the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
The other problem, okay, just branching into something different here. The other problem I have with learning two languages at a time is that people assume this is going to make them quote-unquote fluent in multiple languages faster, and I don't agree with that. The reason is, if you have an hour a day, if you spend an hour a day in Spanish for 6 months, you're going to be really, really good in Spanish. I'm not going to say you're going to be the capital F word, but you're going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
If you spend 30 minutes a day in Spanish and 30 minutes a day in, like, Norwegian, for my case, in 6 months, you're going to be just okay in both of them.
Yeah.
So you're not speeding your process up. It's not like you're cheating the system and getting a 2-for-1. So that's my argument against it, is because I don't think people do it because they want to. There is a just fascination with polyglottism.
Mm-hmm.
People, like, no longer is bilingual like a cool thing, you know? I mean it is, but it's like, no, it's like, I speak 2 languages. All right, that dude speaks 60. Who cares? And I think people think that it's like a cheap way, you know what I mean? Like, into trying to do that. And I think, of course, I'm technically cheating. I mean, because if this is not my goal, but if I learn Norwegian, I could pretty much spend maybe 3 months and understand the differences in Swedish and Danish, which would technically make me technically at that point, a 5-language person with Esperanto and English added on. And that's not my goal there. But it's not like you can't cheat the system, because it's what time you put in, whether you put the same amount of time into one language or you split that time between 2 or split it between 3, you're not going to advance any further in that language than the time you put in. Exactly.
I agree with that. Like, if you were to add that an extra hour on, yeah, you're going to learn them both faster. You're going to learn 2 languages at the regular pace. I will say, though, that if you are like Matt and Abigail and you are able to keep 2 similar languages separate in your brain, in that case, you will go faster, probably. Yeah. So instead of, like, in your example, instead of learning 1 language at 100%, you're learning 2 languages at like 50%, right? So
Me?
if you... Yeah, in your example, right? Where you
in my example. Yeah, I thought you meant like with what I'm doing. Yeah, no, absolutely. In like the example, 50-50.
Yeah. And then, so maybe if you're able to keep the 2 similar languages separately, maybe you're learning them both at like 75-80%. And so you're learning them slower than you would on their own, but you're still learning them
quickly.
A little bit faster. Maybe. Again, I'm not like a neuroscientist or something. And my brain doesn't work that way. But I could see how it could be helpful to some people, but I think the general populace, I think maybe the reason that they're able to do it is because they already have studied many languages for a long time. They know what they're doing. They're not amateurs.
I know they both know German. I don't know if... I think they both know French as well, correct?
At least, yeah, I think so. At least one of them has studied Esperanto.
Yeah, I know Matt does Norwegian, because he makes his Norwegian updates.
So they've got like a lot of language learning under their belt.
Yeah, so that makes a little more... I think the big thing is, and even for people like me, who's just... At this point, I would consider myself bilingual. I think it's just a thing where language learning, you have to learn how to learn a language. Yeah. And if you are monolingual and you jump right into trying to be, study 2 languages at once, and I understand the theory behind it, because look, we all get bored. But that's why, I've tried to be a little bit better about my goals. That's why this year I said Spanish is #1 focus. If I have extra time, I'm going to dabble in Norwegian. Hey, if I finish both trees, fantastic. That means I had a lot of freaking time this year.
Yeah.
But if not, Spanish is the main goal. And like we said earlier, it keeps you refreshed and rejuvenated. But and the reason I decided is because I didn't want to do a thing where it's like Spanish is number one, and then all right, I'm going to dabble in Norwegian. Now I'm going to do some Russian. Also, screw some Russian cases for the love of God. But in that way, it's smarter on me because at the end of the year, hey, Spanish we're good in. Also, I stumbled into an A2 level of Norwegian, so in the next year, let's bump that up to a B2 just because of just dabbling in it throughout the year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think while saying that, you brought up a really important point as well. You brought up your goals, like what you want to get out of this.
Yeah.
And so keeping in mind what you want to learn while trying to balance your languages is really important. You want to get to conversational Spanish. Mm-hmm. You want to improve your Norwegian. One of those is a more solid goal. One of those is a harder goal.
Right.
So that's where you're going to want to put your time. Like if you're trying to figure out how do I balance these languages, you have to have clear goals.
Yeah.
For you, your goal doesn't need to be clear for Norwegian because it's not. You're sort of dabbling. You're getting a head start, really.
Exactly.
But if you're trying to balance two languages, like okay, I want to improve my French from a B2 to a C1, and I want to get Spanish to conversational.
Right.
I would put more time into my Spanish because I'm on the borderline sort of B2, C1 for French, I think.
Right.
That's just an estimate. I've never been tested.
Yeah.
And so
I know that French is your strong. Well, we talked about that in the first podcast.
Yeah.
Well, so this kind of breaks topic a little bit. This also goes into a little bit of, my brain. Sorry, with moving and stuff, my brain is just to you. And this goes into everybody's goals and what your goal is specifically, but I think there's a lot of misconception about the gap between a B2 and then into the C's, because a lot of people's goals are, I want to be C2, I want to be mistaken for a native, blah blah blah. And I don't think people realize that if you hit a B2 level, excluding some grammar points and stuff, because like when you get into C's, that's when you start getting into grammatical breakdowns. And it's a lot more about the grammar versus like your vocabulary. If you hit a B2 status, you're going to be able to go somewhere and pretty much do whatever you want to do. It may come out just a touch funny, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah, like I lived in France for 6 months getting my bachelor's degree. I was able to set up a contract for my housing. I was able to get health insurance and renter's insurance. I was able to set up a cell phone. Like, those are complicated things.
Absolutely. Those are hard to do in English.
Yeah. My one class was just like current political things. Mm-hmm. Like all we did is someone would give like a 20-minute presentation on their topic, like controversial topics, and then we discussed it. We discussed things like abortion and doctor-assisted suicide and gun control.
Wow.
Like these are things
that's as a B2 essentially.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if I had a C1 in French. Wow. I'm probably a high B2. Because C1, from what I can tell, is more so like you're getting into the level where you're able to like translate things. You're starting to be mistaken for a native. I would never be mistaken for a native.
You may sometime.
Maybe, but not anytime soon. My accent is terrible, and I make a lot of dumb mistakes. And like that's the thing. Everyone's like, you don't need to be native level to be fluent, and I think that that's something that people need to think more about.
I agree too. I agree 100%, because at the end of the day, if I'm speaking, this podcast is going to be so much better when I become, conversational and I quote real language. But if I were to go, all right, well, let's just for the sake of an argument, just because it's the only language I know. All right, well, you know what? We'll just use English. Screw it. I won't even talk about Esperanto. I'm going to try to get better about that. But if I go to a country and English was my second language, and if I said, hey, man, can I get some milk? Or I said, hey, I would like some milk. In those exact patterns, guess what? I got my point across.
Exactly.
And And so it doesn't matter if you're... There's people that have lived in the United States for 30 years that don't sound like a native, and you know exactly what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And like, that's the, you don't, as long as you can get your point across, I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
And unless you want to be a translator or interpreter,
right,
then you need to learn more. But for like the normal person, I don't think you need to worry about it.
That's exactly it. See, and I'm a lot of the reason I'm learning Spanish is because I do want to use, I don't want to use it for translation purposes technically. I do want to be able to use it so if people call my work and they're like, hey, do you have anybody that speaks Spanish, I can speak to them.
Yeah.
But I don't need a C1 level or a C2 level to do that.
No, you just need to know the vocabulary really that your work involves.
Right.
And basic grammar.
Absolutely. And that's, I've thought about taking some business Spanish classes because there's a lot of vocabulary you're not going to learn. You're not going to learn, freight truck or lift gate service or, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to be in your Duolingo course. So,
not at all.
But anyway, back on, sorry, I feel like I've derailed it a lot here, but that happens, man. That's my personality. I try not to be that way, but I do. But, what did I derail it from? Sorry.
I'm not even sure anymore. But we could go on to learning 2 different languages because we've talked mostly about learning similar languages.
Yeah. I think,
so.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so obviously the biggest benefit of learning 2 different languages is you're not really in danger of mixing them up. Like if I want to learn French and Japanese together at the same time, like I did in high school, the grammar is completely different. Like French is a subject verb object, or sometimes it's subject object verb, but mostly it's subject verb object.
I did not know that.
That sometimes it's subject object verb?
Yeah.
When you're using pronouns, sometimes you can put the object before the verb, but it's just for pronouns.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, so like the phrase for I love you is je t'aime. The T there is the pronoun you.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's okay. That makes sense now.
Yeah,
I guess it's almost in a weird way like reflexive verbs in Spanish. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. And then Japanese is always subject, object, verb.
Yes.
Like the grammar is very different. Like I'm not going to mix it up. But at the same time, that can also be difficult because now you're learning 2 completely different grammar sets with 2 completely different vocabularies.
Right.
So you're having to put more time into it. Whereas if there's a little bit of overlap, you can cut a little bit off.
Right. Yeah, that's true too. Like I feel like, if you were to study French and Japanese, I almost feel like French from where it's so... And again, also the other thing to point out is it depends on what your native language is. Because that makes a big difference. But for English speakers, for example, if you're trying to learn French and Japanese, to me, you're going to do better at both of them if you put the main focus on Japanese because it is so different, as to where French is super similar to English. You're going to have more of an understanding in French, so you could hypothetically study it a touch less and become better at it, or have them more so on a similar level, versus if you just casually study Japanese, you're going to progress ungodly slow. Yeah, no, I definitely agree to that to a certain extent. That comes down to like different like second language acquisition theories, where you're looking at things like with French and English, there's a lot more overlap, so there's a lot less to learn. Right. And so yeah, you need to put in less time to learn it. But yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I sort of derailed myself there in my head, and I forgot where I was going with this. Okay, that's the name of the game here, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, you need to when you are learning different languages, you need to learn where your goals are, where you need to get. You need to be able to self-assess. So, if you want to progress at an even pace, then you need to be able to look and see. Okay, I've gotten this far in French, and I've only gotten this far in Japanese. Maybe I should change my schedule around. Instead of doing an hour of each, maybe 45 minutes of French, an hour 15 of Japanese. Right. Being able to self-assess is vital in language learning, but it's even more vital when you're trying to balance multiple languages. Yeah. The other
the other thing to me is that, like you said, keeping it separate. Just as an example, like for example, the word for I've of course I've dabbled in 9 million different languages, but I remember in Chinese the word for waiter, or it's waiter or waitress. I don't think it matters because I think that Chinese for the most part is genderless. Like they even use ta, which is the same word for he and she. And oh yeah, you're studying Chinese, so the word for waitress is fu yan. So if I'm speaking a language, if I say, come here, waitress, whatever language I'm speaking, I'm not going to be like, vinu al mi fuhu huan. You know what I mean? Like I'm not. It's you're not going to mix that up.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sound systems are just so different that you're not going to have that problem. Like when I was studying French and Japanese at the same time, never confused. I mixed them for fun, but I never confused them.
Oh, you
when I was learning,
what would that be? Frappanese, or you know how they Spanglish and stuff like that. Like, what would you call a French and Japanese mixture?
I don't even know. I'm just gonna go with Frappanese because it kind of sounds like a drink you can get at Starbucks.
That sounds like it does, man. That'll be on their menu next month, and I'll sue them. Cease and desist.
But like when I was learning Spanish, like, oh god, I can't think of a realmente is like really,
right?
And then I guess that's not really the same because it's vraiment in French.
Does French have a? Because, like you said, in Spanish, mente is the ly ending in English.
Yeah, and then in French, it's mon, which is ment, so it's very similar.
Spelling-wise, it's similar. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's pronounced differently. But, I mean, even still, like, sometimes when I would see it, I'd read the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like, I could see, like, this is the one it is. I'm like, oh, I recognize this word, and then I'd say the other one.
Yeah.
So, like, that could... But, like... So that made it really easy for me to learn that morpheme in Spanish. I was like, oh, mente looks like mon. I get it. I understand it. I've got that knowledge in my head.
Right.
But if I were to be learning them at the same time, maybe I'd have trouble remembering which one goes to which because they sort of sound similar and they're spelled very similarly.
Now, from French to Spanish or Spanish to French, are there? I'm sure there are. Are the false friends?
I'm sure there are, but I don't know any because my French or my Spanish vocabulary isn't large enough.
I wondered if there was. Like, I know that there is. Like, for example, in English, actually means one thing, but actualmente means currently in Spanish. So that's one of those false friends. So I wondered if
in French as well, it also means currently. And I still to this day, sometimes I get it wrong.
You get used to it, man. You get used to. I mean, I don't care how much you study a language. I think that it's impossible not to get confused at some point, like just a little bit. That's not doubting anybody's conversational skill or anything. I think you've heard something for, like me. I'm 30 years old. I've heard something for 30 years. Like, you're just used to it.
Yeah, definitely. But.
Sorry, go. God. Okay. So, yes, French.
Where were we?
Oh, man. This is the episode where I ruin everything.
No, my mind drew a blank there, too. It's not just you. But, I mean, just... Those were the big points that I had. That learning similar languages at the same time can be a hindrance because you can get them mixed up, like my example with the Japanese grammar, where the tabe so, taberu so, if they're too similar, sometimes your brain connects them too closely and you have trouble separating them.
I can agree.
But at the same time, it can also speed you up because you have to put in less work because, like with actualmente and actuellement, there's similar words. I can go, okay, I get it in one language, I just apply the other pronunciation to it. Bam.
That's good. I
learned two birds with one stone, right? So there are pluses and minuses to that. But they're the complete opposite for learning two different languages. Whereas you've got to now study harder because you're learning two completely different systems, but you have less of a risk of keeping them you're mixing them up.
Mixing them up, right.
So, and then the other, oh, there goes my brain again.
Dude, that's been my day. I just keep forgetting everything.
Yeah. Maybe it's just one of those days.
It might be. It may very well be. I think ultimately that the other thing is a lot of people have this idea. First off, they do this with one language, and I know they do it for two as well. But people have this idea that, oh, I can study. And this actually goes into one of my problems with Duolingo. I love the program, obviously, but like from where it is set up like a game, they make you think if you do one lesson, you hit 10 XP, you're going to be fluent in 6 months. And I'm sorry, man. If you're spending 10 minutes a day learning a language, you are not going to be where you think that you're going to be in 6 months.
No, definitely not. There's a reason that we keep using hours a day as our examples, because that's really what you need.
Yep.
You need about an hour a day to get some real significant progress in there.
Yep. Well, I think about the Foreign Language Institute or whatever it's called that has it shows you the kind of the recommended hours to become conversational. In Spanish and any of the level 1 languages, minimum 450 hours.
Yeah.
Even at an hour a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 450. That's a year. That's over a year.
Yeah.
So, that's crazy. There, Azrin, actually, I found Azrin the Language Nerd through your channel.
Mm-hmm.
And, he talked about people wanting to do this in 6 months. If you're not spending 15 to 20 hours a week studying, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no. Like all those things out there that promise you like fluency in like 30 minutes a day in like 3 months or something. Yeah. Anything that promises me fluency in a certain amount of time, I just
yeah,
I think that could be a whole scam. Podcast. Sorry?
It's a money-making scam.
It's exactly what it is. Like, and there's a lot of different things out there that when I see them, that's like a red flag, and I won't touch the product, at least if it's not free.
Yep.
And like that could be a whole nother topic for a whole nother podcast. Like, there's so much there.
Yeah, and that's not a knock on anybody. Like, I love Benny Lewis. He's a marketing genius, but I also think that people follow him. You know what, man? And here's the other thing, too. And this kind of breaks off. This is going to be an all-over-the-place podcast, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But Benny absolutely has the resources to become fluent in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
It works for him. That's fine. His literal job, is to learn languages. That's what this guy gets paid a bunch of money to do. So,
how can I get that job?
I know, dude. So to him, he can say, I need to learn, and obviously be a little tough if we're talking, and I know that he learned Mandarin, but like if he learned Japanese or Korean or something like that, but if this guy said, I have to learn Romanian in 3 months, move to the country, stay there for 3 months, it's a lot easier for him. And I think one of the biggest problems in language learning is people compare themselves and their goals to other people.
Yeah.
Which is where the multi-language thing even comes in, because polyglots are like, I'm studying 16 languages this year. And it's like, oh, cool. If you can do 16, I can clearly do 2 or 3.
Exactly. And like, that's the thing. Like, if I really wanted to, I could, study 3 or 4 languages and probably keep them separate and get decent. But I'm getting my master's. I have to write a capstone paper. I have to do tons of projects. Like, I don't have the liberty of doing what some of these other people do.
Yeah.
I might be able to squeeze it in even with all this stuff, but I would be miserable. As much as I love learning languages, I need some downtime.
Well, when Moses talks about his FLR method that he has, and I've had the opportunity to check some of those out, and it's a really cool system. But he doesn't promise you're going to be fluent in 3 months. He's like, do the course, it'll get you conversational, but it's kind of at your own speed type of thing. But anyway, dude. Oh, so his course, when he gives you the breakdown, It's 3 hours a day.
Oh, yeah.
Hour of listening, hour of talking, and I can't remember an hour of something else. But it's 3 hour. I think 3 hours of just like constructing sentences with because his method's like very plug and play. So it's like it sets you up with this, chop half of this sentence off, replace it with this sentence down here. Oh, now I have a completely new sentence.
Okay.
But so even that method is not 20 minutes a day to fluency. It's 3 hours a day.
Yep. Which sounds about right.
So
that's. Oh.
That's what. Maybe I should do that as an experiment, man. Take a week and just be like, this week, just to see what happens. I am spending 3 hours a day. I'm spending 21 hours this week in some form of study.
That would be insane. I've considered doing something like that in the past, but every time I think about it, I'm just like, I don't have the time for this. Maybe
yeah.
I've got spring break coming up next month. Maybe we can coordinate something during my spring break and we can do a
That would be cool, man. Because it doesn't have to be 3 hours consecutively. It's just,
Oh God, no. Yeah.
Take a. And actually, I did maintained Esperanto and Chinese for 2 weeks pretty well, and then I just kind of fell off the wagon. But I was doing. The other key is, to me, part of the reason I love Spanish and I love a lot of Romance languages, which this isn't a Romance language, Norwegian I won't be able to do this because pronunciation's so different. But with Esperanto or Spanish or Italian, probably to an extent, probably not French, obviously, but I can study those at night, and if I don't have the sound, it's okay. Mm-hmm. They're phonetic.
Yep.
Mandarin, I would have 30 minutes on lunch at work. I'd do 30 minutes at work. When I got home, I would do another 30 minutes or so. And then at night, hey, I'd review flashcards for an hour for Esperanto, and I was fine because I didn't have to hear them because you can see them and recognize them.
Exactly. Yeah, when things are more phonetic, that's a lot easier.
Yep.
French is, I wouldn't say phonetic, but it's got a lot of general rules that aren't ever broken, I don't think. So I don't think there's any regularity in their spelling. Not like English. Oh God, I could not imagine learning English without audio.
Yeah, I saw. It's funny to read, but I read a thing today, and it was like, oh, I always read red as red before I realized that red is being read as read. Like, and it's in the sentence, it makes sense as you're breaking this down, and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah. That reminded me one time, completely off topic. One time I saw a bumper sticker that said, I, READ, your emails. And I went crazy for about a week. Because I was like, did they read my emails or are they currently reading them?
Yeah.
Like, do they read my emails or did they read them? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just bothered me so much. And everyone was like, calm down. I'm like, but I need to know.
Yeah. The other weird thing like that is it's TEAR and TIER are pronounced the same, but TEAR and TEAR are pronounced differently.
They are indeed. English is really dumb.
It is very weird, very weird. I definitely could not imagine trying to learn English as a second language.
Yeah, no. You know the sh sound, like in the word shut?
Mm-hmm.
There are 11 ways to spell it in the English language.
Let's see. SH, CH, SCH.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of any of other, like, I'm trying to think of other words. We're talking just specifically sh, right?
Yep.
My God. I'm sure at some point there's like one with an X, like an X and a U or something.
You just said one.
What?
Sure.
Sure. Oh yeah. Okay. S. Yeah. Sure.
S. SS, an issue.
Issue. Uh huh.
C, an ocean.
TI. Shun.
Yep. There's a lot of them.
Dude, that's crazy, man.
That was just up to 7 off the top of our head.
Yeah. Did you say? Yeah, you said ocean. So CE.
Yeah.
Ocean. What a weird language, man. So anyway, all right. So let's we'll finish out this 2-language thing. Then we can ramble for a minute. Is there any other points about learning 2 languages? Like, all right. So closing arguments. Ultimately, learning 2 languages at the same time.
My argument would be, unless you're an experienced language learner, don't do it unless you're dabbling. Yeah. To actively learn 2 languages at the same 2, 3, 4 languages at the same time, you have to have experience. You have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you have to be able to self-evaluate how well you're doing to make sure that you have to have goals. You have to make sure you're reaching those goals at a reasonable pace. Yeah. It takes a lot of knowing yourself, and it takes a lot of being able to be honest with yourself to successfully learn actively 2 or more languages at the same time.
I agree with that 100%. And main point being, language learning is very hard.
Yeah.
It is very, very hard. I learned the easiest language in the world, and it was very hard at the end of the day. So if you aren't overly experienced with learning and you don't know how to get over your little humps in the road, or bumps in the road, not humps in the road. What am I talking about here? Bumps in the road that say, that get you discouraged and make you stop. If you don't know how to get past that, it's going to be hard doing just 1 language, but you throw 2 on top of that, you are never going to reach your language goals.
Yeah.
Because you're going to hit one snag, and instead of ruining 1 language, you're going to ruin 2, and you're going to hit a bump in one of them at some point. I guarantee it. Guaranteed. Yeah. You're going to hit a bump, and it's going to discourage you. So you just got to be really careful. I think it's a good thing, but I think it's a bad thing too.
Yeah, definitely. And what you're saying about like being discouraged from a language, like if you like hit a bad enough bump in a language, that can leave you with a bad taste in your mouth for a long time.
Yep.
I was fairly seriously actively learning Korean about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a really bad point in my mental health. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I've got possibly bipolar, at least depression.
Okay.
And so like it was really bad, and I was trying to learn Korean, and I was seeing someone who spoke Korean, which is why I was learning it.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended on a bad note, and my mental health deteriorated terribly, and I still have bad feelings towards Korean to this day because of it.
Gotcha. I know that in your was it your guilty language tag when it was the 1 language that you would never learn, and it was Korean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Part of the reason.
That makes sense, and you're absolutely right. You are 100% right on that. You can get a negative, and honestly, people should realize that, because it happens with things in life in general.
Yeah. You
eat a bad piece of. All right, for example, I ate, which I know that are you vegan or vegetarian?
Vegan, yeah.
Okay, so not to like disgust you or anything, but like I ate, which I know you're not that type of person, but I ate some chicken at a Mexican restaurant one night, and I got super sick.
Yeah.
Have not ate chicken, like it ruined Mexican restaurant chicken for me. I cannot eat it. The thought of it makes me sick.
Yeah, no, that happened to me with chewing gum when I was in like late elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
I had a piece of chewing gum just disintegrate in my mouth.
Turned to liquid?
Yeah, well, like a goo.
Yeah.
Like a sandy goo.
I thought that happened with bubble tape before.
Ugh, I can't chew gum anymore.
Yeah.
But like the same thing can happen with languages.
Yep.
And if you're learning 2 languages at the same time and you don't know what you're doing, odds are you're gonna get negative feelings towards both of those languages because of a hardship in one of them.
Yep. So I definitely think it is I think if you are monolingual, I think you should stick with 1 language. And if you really want to learn 2 languages, cheap plug for Esperanto. Go learn Esperanto in 2 or 3 months, and then you can jump right into 2 languages. So,
exactly.
No, but it is amazing from being on a side point. That's it. I think that's it on the 2 language thing. I think we closed that out. Yeah. Pretty well. But I will say, kind of understanding and knowing two languages now, when I go into something studying, like Norwegian, the very small amount that I've studied is coming to me so much. Like, it's so much easier for me to understand since I have a grasp on the idea of having to learn, grammatical points and stuff like that.
Yep.
Just kind of breezing through those lessons. Vocabulary is always going to be a hang up. But it's like I don't have to think about things as much. Like, it's just like, okay, this is the way it is. Okay, cool. I got it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. The more languages you learn, the better and easier it's going to be to learn more. Because as I mentioned connections earlier and how you can make connections too closely in your head, our brain likes to make connections. So if you've got more bases, like solid bases to make connections to, that's great. You're going to learn faster that way.
Yeah.
So, but you have to be able to solidify and make that one base concrete before you can add on to it.
Yeah. And you're right, man. I would love to. We should do a. It would take a little bit to prepare, but I would love to do a full cast on maybe like mnemonics or something.
Oh yeah.
Or just word association. Like today, as a matter of fact, because I sent you a message asking if you're ready, and you said, "Hold on a minute." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I'll just do another memorized lesson." I've got 15 words to remember before I've fully done the last lesson, and then I'll do, because I always memorize the vocabulary before I go into the Duolingo lesson. It's just easier for me to do that. But I could not, for the life of me, remember the word for bill or invoice. And odds of me using it in Esperanto are probably literally never. Unless I was like talking to a waitress and told her to bring me the bill. But let's face it, probably not going to be at any Esperanto restaurants in the near future.
Yeah.
But I kept thinking, what is it? And the word is facturo. Fakturo. Facturo. And I was like, what? And like, all right, I'm struggling with this. What can I do to remember it? And so finally I said, the factory sent me a bill or invoice.
Yeah.
And it's not the exact same, but it works. Factory, facturo. Okay.
Perfect. I think it'd be really fun to do mnemonics. So.
Yep. It would be fun. Actually, I talked about this in the podcast that'll... It's a weird timeline, the one that technically airs tomorrow, but for people watching, the one that aired last week. Time
travel.
Yeah, the way that I always remembered umbrella in Spanish, paraguas, was para, which is like for, aguas, which is water, for water. So that's the way that I always remembered umbrella, for water, paraguas.
Yeah, that's what it is in French too, sort of. It's for rain, but yeah. But the way I remember umbrella in Japanese, the word for umbrella in Japanese is casa.
Okay.
So I think my casa is your casa, my umbrella is your umbrella, mi casa is su casa. That's
hey man.
That's how I learned the word for umbrella in Japanese.
Dude, what works. I can get behind that. Fully, man. I love mnemonics, dude. It's one of the coolest things ever to me.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I think I actually talk about this in that podcast with Aaron as well. But like, you think to yourself, okay, so if I remember bill, for example, facturo, factory, whatever. So as I'm speaking, if I would say, oh, mi bezonas facturo. But I need a bill or I need an invoice. You don't have to think about it, because you would think, all right, I know that I need to say I need a bill, mi bezonas, factory, but it's not like that. Like, once you make that mnemonic connection, it just somehow, it's weird the way that works, man.
Yep, it's just there. Your brain just needs to grasp onto something, and once it's grasped onto it, it's there.
Yep. It's super weird. I love it. We should do that. We should do. I'll start writing down some of the mnemonics I've got in different languages or whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. I think that'd be really fun. I was just thinking that I was going to start making my list too, and so whenever we did decide to do it, I'd be ready.
Yeah, that would be cool, man. Because I've got several. I'll have to go through some words. again, and kind of, and I'm sure, studying Norwegian over the next little bit, I'm sure I'll create some. I'm not overly far in Norwegian, but we're getting there. So I'm really struggling. Have you ever looked into Norwegian or any of the Scandinavian languages?
No, I think I started Swedish at one point just because I was bored, and then I did like one lesson.
Swedish has a lot harder pronunciation than Norwegian, which Norwegian pronunciation is a little weird too. But so there's not really a word for "the." If you're saying "the" something, so like for example, a man is en man.
Yeah.
But if you're saying "the man," you take the "in" and you add it to the end of the word. So instead of it being "en man" for a man, it's "menen," which means "the man." So, and dude, it's like it can be a little confusing, especially when you're trying. I haven't got to it yet, but I'm wondering, like the word for I'm trying to think. Okay, the word for woman is kvina, which is very similar to Esperanto, using like kanabo, like the K consonant sound. But so it's kvina. So in kvina, right, a woman. So kvinen, which would be the woman.
Yeah.
But how do you make that the women? How do you make that plural?
I'm sure you'll find out soon.
Dude, it's insane. So I think to make it plural from an N, like in kviner, I think you add an R onto it, but it's crazy.
That sounds frustrating. Like not having it in front of me so I can see it, that sounds like a pain.
Yeah.
But
I don't know why, man. It's weird. I love two of my favorite language groups are, I love Slavic languages, but I love Scandinavian.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Scandinavian seems way better to me right now than Slavic, just because of those cases.
Yeah, it sounds simpler. That's for sure. Russian is one of the scariest grammar. Like, I haven't really looked into it, but from what everyone says about it, whew,
yeah,
I'm gonna wait for a while for that one.
Do you watch Lang Focus?
With
Paul? He did a video on the Russian language like a year ago, and see, I knew there was a bunch of cases, but your cases have to match. So your pronouns have to match adjectives, which have to match, whatever's taking the verb, like the action, whether it's accusative or anything like that. But he was saying, dude, there are 24 possible endings for an adjective pending on cases.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I don't know about that, man. I will be the most non-descriptive mother effer you've ever talked to speaking. They'll be like, can you describe that? And I'll say, nope.
No, it's there.
Yep. It exists. So.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I think I'm good, man. This was a weird podcast. This is kind of what I like, though, man. I like structure, but I like genuine conversation too. So hopefully people enjoy that.
Hopefully. I do think that we should add on here that if any of those random threads that we went on sound interesting to you, let us know in the comments below, and we'll go into it further in the future.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's getting possible future podcast topics. I do, like I said, we need to take a couple of weeks and plan it out just to get a ton of mnemonics down, because I think that could be a really fun episode.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do the mnemonics one, but we went off on a bunch of topics out there, and a bunch of them I have a lot to say about. But, we'll see. We'll do the mnemonics one. If anyone else is really interested in anything else, we could move that to the front, probably.
Sure. I'm okay with that. So, but yeah, we will end this episode there. I hope you guys enjoyed the super crazy rant. Dakota, as always, man, huge shout out, huge thank you for coming on. I know if I'm ever in a bind, I can say, hey, Dakota, and you're like, what's up, dude?
Yes.
So,
that's what I'm here for.
At least until you move to France or wherever. So,
yeah.
if that happens, because the time schedule get a little bit weird. So, but guys, thank you for checking this out. Every Friday at noon, we release the podcast. That's a weird time. I don't know why I picked that. I just did. but it'll always be up every single Friday. Go check out Dakota at Language Learning Lounge on the old YouTubes, Twitter, Facebook, whole bunch of different sites, Instagrams. I guess Snapchat's probably dying with their stupid update. I don't know. But, yeah, man. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like he said, let us know any topics. I'm going to end this because I always ramble too long when I'm ending stuff. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next video.
Have a good night.